Okay, you know that feeling, right? Your palms get sweaty, your heart starts pounding, and you're pretty sure every single person in the room is staring straight through you. That fear of public speaking, it's super common, but it absolutely doesn't have to be the thing that holds you back. So today, we're gonna break down 13 of the most common mistakes that trip people up, and more importantly, how you can sidestep them completely. Oh yeah, we have all been there. It doesn't matter if it's a huge keynote speech or just a weekly update with your team, that feeling of anxiety right before you start is totally universal. It's just your body's natural fight or flight response kicking in. The secret is learning how to manage that feeling and make it work for you. The real difference between a speaker who's just okay and one who's truly great is learning how to channel all that nervous energy. You have to know how to avoid those classic traps that can turn a perfectly good presentation into a painful one. So let's dive into exactly how to do that. We're going to tackle these mistakes in 3 big categories. First, we'll look at the slip-ups in preparation, the things that go wrong before you even open your mouth. Then, we'll get into failures in delivery, how you act when you're on stage. And finally, we'll talk about failing the message itself. So let's start with failing to prepare. This is where you build the foundation for an amazing speech, or, where it all falls apart before you've even started. Honestly, a presentation is usually won or lost long before you step into the spotlight. The absolute number one most critical mistake is giving a generic one-size-fits-all speech. You've got to ask yourself, who are these people? What do they already know about this topic? And the big one, why should they care? What's in it for them? The fix is simple. Do your homework. Talk to the organizer, look up a few people who'll be there. You need to get inside their heads. A message that isn't tailored for a specific audience, it's like throwing darts in a pitch black room. I mean, sure, you might hit something by accident, but you're probably not gonna hit the bullseye. But when you really get who you're talking to, your message can land perfectly, every single time. Okay, another massive mistake in the prep phase is thinking you can just wing it. So many people think that not practicing will make them sound more natural or spontaneous. But you know what really happens? You end up rambling, you forget your most important points, and your timing goes completely out the window. You know those presentations that look so polished and effortless? I guarantee you, they are the result of serious, meticulous planning. Rehearsing isn't about memorizing every word, not at all. It's about getting the flow down, knowing your transitions cold, and feeling confident in your structure. And seriously, practice out loud. It makes a huge difference. All right, on to our second category, failing the delivery. This is huge. You could have the most brilliantly prepared message in the world, but if your body language and your voice are working against you, that message is just gonna get lost. We're talking about a whole bunch of things here. Stuff like having super low energy, or talking a million miles an hour, or that awkward eye dart thing people do, and of course, all those little weird physical tics that pop up when we're nervous. One of the biggest tells for nerves is when a speaker turns into a runaway freight train of words. You just go and go and go, never stopping to take a breath, and you just completely steamroll your audience. A pause is not your enemy. It's actually a super powerful tool. It gives people a second to actually think about what you just said, and it adds some real weight to whatever you're about to say next. Next up, let's talk about those distracting physical habits. A lot of speakers don't even realize they're doing it, but they adopt these strange little characters when they're on stage. Let's see if any of these look familiar to you. First up, we've got the classic fig leaf, where you clasp your hands in front of you. It's such a defensive pose, and it just closes you off from the people you're trying to connect with. Or maybe you've seen the fencer, that stiff-armed pointing thing. It literally creates a barrier between you and the audience. And of course, the awkward shifter, just kind of rocking back and forth on their feet. All of these things scream, I'm nervous, and they totally pull focus from your actual message. And now, for what might be the biggest sin in all of presenting, reading directly from your slides. Let me give you a little demo. In a flat, monotone voice. Reading this long paragraph of text exactly as it appears on the slide, because it's a very shocking statistic that I found on the internet, and I need to make sure I convey all the important business jargon. You were already tuning out, weren't you? Of course you were. The audience knows how to read. They came to hear your take on it. Your slides are just your visual aids. They're your backup singers. You are the star of the show. Use them to highlight your points. Don't let them become your script. Okay, on to our third and final section, failing the message. This is all about the actual substance of your talk, the content, the structure, the ideas themselves. A huge trap, especially if you're in a technical field or business, is the dreaded data dump. This is when you just blast the audience with a wall of charts, stats, and numbers without ever bothering to weave them into a story that makes sense. See, without a story, data is just noise. It becomes this meaningless blur, and your audience's brains just completely check out. They're gone. To make data powerful, you have to give it context. For every single number you share, ask yourself, so what? And then tell that story. Here's a mistake that just tanks your credibility right out of the gate. Never, ever, ever start your speech with an apology or an excuse. The second you say, sorry, I'm just really nervous, or I didn't have a lot of time to put this together, you're basically telling everyone in the room that what you're about to say isn't worth their time. And finally, a really common mistake that happens at the very end. It feels natural to end with a Q&A session, right? But it's actually a huge strategic error. Why? Because you're giving up control of your own conclusion. The last thing your audience hears might be some random off-topic question. The pro move? Take questions, for sure, but then you take the stage back for one final, powerful summary of your main point. You get the last word. So what's the big takeaway from all this? It really all comes down to being intentional. Once you understand these common pitfalls, you can actively turn them into strengths. It's about preparing for your audience, commanding the stage with real confidence, and crafting a message that is so clear it leaves a lasting impact. Look, every single time you get up to speak, it's an opportunity. It's a chance to share a big idea, to get people to act, to maybe even change how they see the world a little bit. So the only question that's left is this: what impact are you going to make?